Hey everybody, how's it going? I'm Paul, I'm with the DiceyReview.com, and tonight, as you can see, we're going to be doing something a little bit different. We're going to be doing a prototype overview of a new game that is hopefully going to be coming out soon. So the game is called Homicide Bureau, and it's coming out from a company called Jet Runner Games. And there's a few cool things about this game that I kind of want to highlight from the top. Number one, the theme is a detective-based theme where you're playing a detective or a cop that's trying to solve a crime. You don't see too many games with that theme. The other thing that's cool is you're going to be using what the game calls a detective die, and you're going to be using it in a couple different ways. And this die is your main worker, but it's also used to break ties. So there's kind of a dual use there, and that's pretty neat as well. So we didn't show setup in this video, but I will say that it's pretty quick and simple. You're basically going to shuffle some cards and place them on the table, and then each player will be required to do some setup of their player board. The shared space in the table is going to be mainly taken up with these cards. You'll have a deck of cards that relates to each day as you're pursuing certain cases and pursuing leads. You'll also have these core 4 cards. And these cards will allow you to manipulate your dice in certain ways, and some of them are pretty self-explanatory. But for instance, like this card will allow you to add +1 or -1 to the value of your die and then use that die. This one, for instance, will allow you to re-roll some of the dice in your pool, and you can use these to get better results, basically. The other 2 decks that you'll see are the equipment decks, and these will basically allow you to get more dice to use. And thematically, like you'll see police protection, or you might see something like, what's a detective without his trusty tobacco pipe? And once again, these decks will allow you to gain more dice to use in your pursuit of the cases. The player mats are pretty easy to set up. You're going to have a pool of personal cubes here. You're going to have a pool of your personal dice. You will get to select a character that you can play. You'll also have your detective die that you can place right here. And once again, a lot of unique mechanics that tie into that. There are a couple of different spaces that are designated for the equipment dice. So if we follow the example that we had earlier with the tobacco pipe, this will allow you to take 3 dice and place them in this pool, and you would be able to take these dice from your supply, roll them, and then place them on this spot. You will also have a case card that will give you, once again, some theme, and it will also allow you to pursue a specific type of case for bonus points at the end of the game. For setup, we have this face up, but it'll remain face down throughout the gameplay. And then you will also have unique sections on your player mat where you can put the different types of case cards that you'll gain throughout the game. Alright, so now we're going to give some examples of gameplay. At the start of each round, what you're going to do is you're going to turn over cards from the particular day that you're in, so we're in day 1, and you'll turn over 1 more card than the amount of players. The start player will roll their detective die and all patrol dice, and then each other player will roll their detective dice. On your turn, you're going to be using dice to take specific actions. You can either use the dice that you control on your player board, or you can use community dice. These dice are used by all players. So you'll be placing dice on cards to claim evidence, or you can also place some dice around the edges to take certain actions. So the evidence cards in the middle of the table will have numbers on them ranging from 1 to 5. And if you have dice that you control, either on your player mat or in the community pool, you can place those dice on the cards and then meet those requirements. So on my turn, I think I'm going to use this die in the community pool to place on this 1. Now you'll notice that I'm placing a 6 on a 1. The numbers range from 1 to 5, but a 6 is considered wild. So I could put this die right here to claim this evidence card. And since it's a community die, you'll mark ownership by placing a cube next to it. So the next player in turn order will take an action. They have a ton of different options on the table. You can see that there's still one of the patrol dice that could be used to claim an evidence card. But each player will be dealt a case file that will benefit them for pursuing certain cases. So this player is going to choose to take this action over here. They only have a 1 on the die, but if they place their die on this card, they can increase that to a 2, which would allow them to claim this card that will give them bonuses at the end of the game. So this player will now have a chance to take their action. There are plenty of options still available on the table. They could use the patrol die to claim evidence. They could use their detective die to claim evidence over here, or use any number of mitigation actions. But they see that I have a 2 over here, so they're going to try and block me and go ahead and claim this evidence card. Once again, they'll use one of their cubes to mark ownership of that card. Alright, so you think you blocked me, but nice try. I've got the ability to once again go to this card and increase or decrease the die by 1. So what I can do is I can go here and then increase that to a 3 and claim this evidence card as well. So it would then be yellow's turn, but they don't have any dice that they can use. There's no patrol dice left in the community pool. So yellow is going to go ahead and pass. That will drop them out of the round. Once a player passes, they don't take any more actions, but a round is not over until all players pass. So the turn will now pass to the orange player, and the orange player still has a detective die that they can use. Now all of the evidence has been claimed, but the players have foolishly left equipment cards that can be used. There will be investigation equipment and cooperation equipment, and these equipment cards will relate to the specific types of evidence cards and suspect cards on the table. So what the orange player is going to do is they will take any number on their detective die and place it next to the type of equipment that they want. This instance, they'll be taking the police protection. You'll discard that, and then this player will be able to roll 3 dice and add them to their active die pool. So now it's the green player's turn. They have no dice that they can use, so they're going to go ahead and pass out of the round. So the turn will pass back to the orange player. So the orange player will go ahead and pass and save these dice for later rounds. So after the orange player has passed, that would signify the end of the round. At that point, these evidence cards will need to be resolved. So we'll go ahead and show an example of how that happens. So as you can see, the dice requirement for this card has been met and it's been claimed by the orange player. Up at the top, you'll see how many points this card is worth at the end of the game, and you'll also see which case this card relates to. The wild symbol will come into play later, so we'll go into more detail about that in a bit. So we'll remove this die from the card, and then this will be placed on the orange player's player mat in the letter that matches. So the yellow player was able to claim this lobby footage card. They'll take their detective die and place it back on the player mat, and then they'll place the card and the letter that matches on their player mat as well. As the green player, I was able to claim the police sketch card and the neighbor card. So I will place these dice back where they go, and then I will put the cards where they go as well. Next, we'll deal out 4 more cards from the day again. The patrol dice and the first player marker will then pass to the left. We're going to go ahead and finish out day 1, and we'll see you in day 2. If you're not able to fully replace the cards that were obtained, you'll move to the next day. So in our example, we would start placing the day 2 cards. And as you can see, as you progress through the days, there will be more dice required to claim cards. So now we'll go ahead and roll for the next round. The orange player will start by taking their turn. They can use one of the investigation dice that they gained from the equipment cards earlier to claim one of the spots on this takeout menu card. So there's 1 space that's still available on this card, and I have the number that matches on my detective die, so I could put this die right here. And the really unique thing about the detective die is that it will be used to break ties. So for instance, on this card, the green player will win this card by placing their detective die there. There can only be 1 detective die on each card. The yellow player will now take their turn. They're going to use their detective die to buy some blue equipment. This will allow them to roll 2 dice from their personal supply. On the orange player's turn, they're going to place their remaining detective die on the 1 of the cross necklace card. Now, at first glance, this may seem to be giving just me a benefit, but we'll explain why the orange player did that during card resolution. The yellow player has claimed the bullet shell casings card. The orange player claimed the pawn shop owner card. If you remember from our earlier explanation, on this takeout menu card, the green player will win due to their detective die being used. The detective die will break ties. It's not all bad for the orange player though. For each personal die that's on the card, they will gain a reputation cube, which is worth a point at the end of the game. So now it may make a little bit more sense why the orange player placed their die on this card even though they knew they wouldn't be able to claim it. They're going to get points for placing their detective die on the card. Now for a detective die, the player will actually gain 2 reputation cubes. So it's the green player's turn, and as you can see, they've used almost all of their dice, and this card has not yet been finished. The green player is really trying to get this card, but there's no real way that they can use dice to claim this card. And this is going to be the last round because as soon as one of these cards leaves, the game will end. So if you remember earlier, we discussed the wild symbols on some of these cards. What this means is that if I am pursuing a card that also matches the case, so in this instance, if I'm pursuing a B case card, I can discard this card, losing its points, to place 2 wild cubes on any number and claim those 2 spaces. So in this instance, I would discard this card, and then I would get to place 2 of my personal cubes on this card, and essentially trade 4 points for 10. So now that we've looked at the gameplay, we're going to go and total the scores and see who was the lead detective. Players will each do this by counting the points on the cards that they didn't discard. They'll count points for their reputation markers, and players will also get 1 bonus point for each card that matched the case that they were dealt at the first of the game. So we'll total all that up, and then I'll be back in a moment with my final thoughts. All right, thanks so much for watching, everybody. That's our overview. We hope that it was informative and we hope that it was helpful. I want to reiterate a couple of other things that I really enjoyed about this game as I got to play it a little bit. Number one, the detective dice are awesome. They provide you a ton of flexibility. You're going to be placing these dice out as the main mechanic of the game, and this one just gives you a ton of options. It'll allow you to go to these different spots to manipulate your values if you need a specific thing. It once again breaks ties, which creates a lot of fun tension, and it allows you to get some equipment that'll allow you to roll more dice and potentially get you what you need. So a lot of depth in this one component for sure. So one of the other things that I really enjoyed about this game was the theme. Once again, it's just not a theme that you see very often. There are plenty of games where you get to play as criminals, but it's fun to be on the right side of the law and get to play as a detective, get to play as the law enforcement in this instance. And there are multiple cases that you'll be trying to solve with each game, and it really ties into the theme. There's going to be flavor text on the cards that will help to kind of tie all that together. So once again, just a really enjoyable theme that you're not going to see very often. So one of the other things that I really enjoyed about this game was the play time. It's going to take about 30 minutes, and that is regardless of player count. If you play with 2 players, if you play with 4 players, it still takes 30 minutes, which is very rare. Usually when you play a game, you're going to add 30 minutes per player, or it might add up to an hour and a half if you play with the full player count. With Homicide Bureau, you're going to play for 30 minutes regardless of how many players are at the table, which is fantastic. If you have a game day planned, or if you have something planned where you're really going to have a meaty, lengthy game, this one would fit really great before or after that, and you're still going to feel like you had plenty of decisions to make. This is not a filler. It's going to take 30 minutes, but you're going to have tons of decisions. So really an awesome play experience that's not going to take too long. Once again, the setup is quick. The play time is quick. You're not going to have a ton of downtime on turns, so just a lot of situations where this game will fit in really nicely. So I know that this game has been at a few conventions. The designers are hoping to show it off at more conventions, so if you get a chance, if you see Homicide Bureau at a convention, definitely sit down and give it a play. I think that you'll like it. Once again, tons of decisions, and if you like dice placement, if you like games that have quick turns, a lot of strategy, I think that you'll really enjoy this one. So check it out if you get a chance. Hope that you've enjoyed the video. Until next time, we'll see you at the table.